upheld. We'll go over a short history of Sunny Slope's wastewater treatment capabilities and the historical wastewater treatment. So the original wastewater treatment plant was built in 1973, so about 45 years ago, as part of the Ridgemark development that was going on at that time. Sunny Slope agreed to provide wastewater service for Ridgemark as that development was under construction through its various phases, and we have provided service to that area ever since. In about 1984, as the Ridgemark development was continuing through its multiple phases, a fifth percolation pond was built by the district, and that's the pond that is on the very southernmost edge of the property. Shortly in this presentation, there'll be a picture, an aerial of that treatment, and then I will mark out exactly where that pond is. And so that pond has been used in operation since 1984. So they're about 35 years that it's been operational. And it's always been treated as a percolation pond for the disposal of treated wastewater. In 2013, Sunny Slope went through an upgrade to its treatment facilities, and we built a brand new treatment plant that utilizes more current and up-to-date technologies to better treat the wastewater. And then again, the percolation ponds that we use have always been used as percolation ponds, and that was their original design for the disposal of treated wastewater. Here's a map of Sunny Slope's wastewater service area. So the red outline shows all the areas that Sunny Slope currently serves. And as you can see, there are only a few portions of developable property that Sunny Slope plans to serve in the future. Currently, there's about 1,240 customers in this area in Ridgemark, Quail Hollow, and Oak Creek. And so that's about how many people Sunny Slope provides wastewater to. We'll go over a quick summary of the current operations. So in this first page, I'm just going to list out kind of the process of operations. And then in the following page, there will be an aerial photo showing exactly where that happens. So initially, the raw wastewater, which we call influent, comes into the treatment plant from our collection system, from the sewer system. It then enters the treatment plant for treatment. There, it undergoes both physical and biological treatment. So the physical treatment is to remove various inorganic materials. So that would be trash that people flush down the toilet, or any rocks or grit, or anything that can't be biologically digested. And then the biological treatment utilizes different bacteria to treat and essentially digest the organic material out of the wastewater. So the biological treatment is what actually, when we think of cleaning the water, that's the majority of what does it, and we use various forms of bacteria in order to do that. So it actually is very similar to how the natural process would happen in nature. We just use current technology to speed it up and do it in a much shorter time frame and a much more smaller footprint. So after the water has undergone both physical and biological treatment and has been fully treated, the water then leaves the plant as treated effluent, which is the water that's been treated and then needs to be disposed of. And the way that water is disposed of is through percolation ponds. So the purpose of percolation ponds is to allow the water to soak back into the ground. In this way, it both replenishes the groundwater rather than being lost out of our region and out of our groundwater basin. And it also is a very efficient way of getting rid of the water. Otherwise, it would cost a whole lot of money if we were looking at having to discharge it somewhere else. And then finally, the sludge, which when I described the bacteria that do biological treatment, sludge is that bacteria. So it's not toxic, it's been treated, but it's organic matter from that bacteria that is sent to drying beds to get rid of the moisture and then off-hauled. So here is an aerial photo of our treatment plant. Initially, the effluent enters the plant right there where that arrow points to. And again, that's the raw, untreated water. The treatment plant right there goes through both the physical and biological treatment. The percolation ponds, which right there it shows 3 of them, and then we have a 4th percolation pond that's a little bit farther to the northwest, which I couldn't quite fit on this photo here. Pond 5, which I mentioned earlier, is the bottommost one in this picture, and it's the one that has water in it when this picture was taken. And all 3 of those ponds have always been used to percolate the treated wastewater. And then finally, that arrow points to the drying beds where the sludge is dried and eventually off-hauled. So currently in 2017, the average gallons per day that we treated was around 156,000 gallons a day, which is right around what is normal for about 1,240 customers. The plant was actually designed and permitted to treat up to 350,000 gallons a day. So you can see that we're currently treating at a little less than half capacity. The reason that the plant was oversized as it is was because we wanted to plan for future growth of the area, and we wanted to make sure that we weren't hamstringed later on by having too small of a plant. But currently we are only operating at about half of its permitted capacity. The annual reporting to the Regional Water Quality Control Board every year includes an analysis of our percolation pond capacity, and historically and currently that percolation pond capacity is more than sufficient for the full 350,000 gallons a day. And so currently we have plenty of percolation capacity there. And then I also wanted to mention that ironically, the quantity of wastewater treated there at that plant has actually been reducing over the years, and that's primarily tied in with conservation. So as toilets and showers and sinks and everything have gotten a lot more efficient, both on the water use side, people's bills go down because they're using less water, but they're also using less wastewater. And so currently we're actually treating quite a bit less wastewater than we had in the historical past. And then all of our percolation ponds, so the 3 that were seen on that previous slide and the 4th around the hill, are in operation, but the operational strategy that we use is we rotate between them. And what that allows is we can dry out a full percolation pond, and that makes it so that it doesn't plug up as much with algae and other biological material that tends to grow in open water sources. And so this is a great way in rotating them that we can continue to maintain that percolation capacity. So now we'll speak real quickly about the landslide near Southside Road. So as Earth Systems previously mentioned, at this point the cause of it is still unknown, and so we don't want to get ahead of ourselves on assuming different causes or trying to come up with solutions before we actually know what the problem is. And this point repeats that a thorough investigation really needs to happen before we can look into the changes or solutions that could happen. Otherwise, we start getting ahead of ourselves and we go down rabbit trails that get everybody confused. And there again, we can't afford to jump to conclusions. There is a lot of money here at stake, both in true finances and the money side of it, but also in public opinion and in public trust for the local government. If we start getting too far ahead of ourselves and jumping to conclusions, we do a disservice to that public trust. And there are many factors that can contribute to this slide instability. And so it's very complex. It's above my head, which is why I'm glad that Earth Systems is here. They're the experts on it. And so I may be deferring questions to them as well. And that concludes my presentation. I'd like to open it up to the supervisors for any questions that they had.
Okay, Rob, thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you very much for taking the time to come to our meeting this morning. The board does understand that there is a lot of unknowns to this, and we're not trying to jump to any conclusions other than trying to, the work that we've done so far was primarily just to get that road open. And unfortunately, we're not be able to get there as quickly as we had hoped. So that is why we're going through this process, and it's going to take a little bit more time and partnership and cooperation with everybody that is involved, the private property owners in the area, the citizens that use that road for their business and school and so forth, and of course our public agencies. So one of the things I'm kind of curious, if I go first, is the Regional Water Control Board permitting. When was that permitted issued? I assume it's a kind of a relatively new permit since the plant has been upgraded not too long ago.
Yeah, so the most recent permit was a permit revision in order to write into the permit the different upgrades and different things that happened for the treatment plant that went into operation in 2013. And so right offhand, I don't know the exact date that permit was issued. It's been relatively recently, shortly after that 2013 upgrade.
Right, and that expanded the treated capacity of the allowed perculation. Not that you've experienced that yet, because we haven't really seen that much growth in that southern or your district service area. But can you describe a little bit of the detail of the type of environmental work that was done, the soils analysis and borings that you might have done through the CEQA process for that?
So I actually was not with the district yet when that treatment plant upgrade was done. And so I would have to go back and do a little bit of research into exactly what CEQA stuff was done for it. I know that there's differences in CEQA between an upgrade to an existing facility and a brand new facility. So I would have to look back and get back to you on exactly what types of geological and geotechnical investigations were done at that time.
Yeah, and it might be helpful, not for me, because I probably can't read it, but for the experts down in this first row, just to cross-reference and just kind of as a foundation of understanding where this water is going and how it moves through the soil, because there is different soils types as you go perk down. Mm-hmm. You hit clay lenses, and all of a sudden the water is to go laterally instead of horizontally, and then you reach different capacities, and that's what we've seen not only in the south part of the county, but more in where I District 2 and in San Juan Valley, I'm very, aware of that.
Yes, and Sunny Slope is more than happy, and we're eager to continue to work with Earth Systems and provide them with any information that we have.
Thank you. Supervisor Munzer?
Thank you. So you have percolation 5,
Yes.
but you mentioned only 4 ponds.
Yes. So,
Why are you up to 5 with only 4 ponds?
It's on our website.
okay, one moment, real quick. Sorry. So, in answer to the supervisor's question, the EIR for our updated treatment plant is actually located on our website at SSS. It's located on Sunny Slope's website.
Okay, great.
sscwd.org. Yeah.
That's the one.
And it's on the
Thanks,
page
Kathy.
for the Ridgemark wastewater treatment and recycled water improvements project.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then, Supervisor Rivas, to get back to your question, I'm sorry. Please repeat your question for me. My mind's got sidetracked.
That's okay. And take a deep breath. We usually don't kill anybody at the at the podium. Usually we don't.
Okay. I appreciate that.
So you mentioned percolation 5, but you only talked about 4 ponds. Why did you number 1 5 if there's only 4 of them?
That's a wonderful question. Here, let me go back real quickly to the map here. So originally, before the treatment plant upgrade, Sunny Slope's wastewater treatment process was through treatment ponds. And so the treatment plant and where those drying beds are actually required that we remove one of the ponds there. And so where the drying beds exist now, there used to be a pond there, which we called pond number 2.
Okay. Okay, so that pretty much answers, because what I have heard, again, through the neighbors and the residents on South Side, is, I guess, basically pond 5, you used that in the 80s, the hill slipped, and use was discontinued until very recently. And you're saying, no, it's always been used?
As far as I know, and as far as Sunny Slope's records show, Pond 5 has always been in operational use, yes.
Okay. All right. Then the other question I had is I've also heard, and I was at some of your meetings when this was being discussed, of utilizing the purple pipe to take the water, say, to the golf course, utilizing the reclaimed water. Where is that now? Because that would reduce the need for the ponds, right?
So the treatment plant was designed such that at a future date when it became economically feasible, there could be additional treatment constructed there, which would bring the water to Title 22 compliance, which is what's necessary for the recycled water. At this point, it is not economically feasible. There is not enough effluent flow to make it feasible for using at the golf course and for incurring the cost of going through that extra treatment.
Okay, so it's not being, at this time, it's not being treated to the level that it can be used off-site.
That's correct.
Okay, all right.
And doing
that's
so
good-
would be
that's good to
very
know.
expensive.
Okay, that's good to know. And then I think I'm going to re-ask the question that Supervisor Patello asked. So in the 45 years that you've had a water treatment facility on top of a hill, you have not really done any studies to see what effect that has to that hill, other than Suica when you did the upgrade.
To my knowledge, that's correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thanks. Any other supervisor question? Supervisor David Cruz?
Yes, I too would like to thank you for you being here. Sunny Slope Water District, are they in the process of getting more hookups?
So Sunny Slope is willing to serve. Sunny Slope generally is willing to serve proposed developments within our wastewater service area. I believe that there are a couple of county developments that are going through the process of getting county approvals for development. At this point, the only one that is on the close horizon, to my knowledge, is the Lampa property, which is called the Ridgemark Bluffs development, which would be about 90 homes, kind of, if I go back to the map originally, sorry. So it would be kind of in that center southern corner where there's a large currently vacant area. I believe that they usually grow hay there, if I'm not correct.
There's a screen behind you you could point to.
Oh, perfect. So it would be this region right here. I currently believe that there's proposed 90 homes there, and Sunny Slope would be willing to serve those homes. I know that the Ridgemark golf course also has proposal for future development, and Sunny Slope would probably be willing to serve them as well. They're a little bit farther out, and so we'd have to, as they would come forward and request service, we would have to evaluate at that time.
Is there in everybody's best interest, especially the residents of Southside Road, to maybe hold off on considering hookups, knowing that we need to solve this problem altogether?
That's a question for Sunny Slope's board to answer. I can't speak to that directly.
And I think as we go on, we'll get more information out of maybe as we analyze what's really happening before we go, take those type of steps, Supervisor De La Cruz. But, it's just something to keep in mind. Any other questions from the board? Rob, I may ask you to come back up after the public comment period is, if there's something specific that they want answers to regarding to, the Sunny Slope Water District, if it's appropriate after public comment. But I certainly want to thank you again for the presentation and your cooperation in this matter.
Most certainly. Yep. And I'm more than happy to answer any public comment or questions or comments at that time as well.
Okay, great. CEO Espinoza, I think we have a presentation.
Yeah, we have your board at our last board meeting requested some insight about access, especially if the rains actually occur and there's a blockage of the current road that they're using now. So what we've done is we've invited Ridgemark HOA president, Paris, as well as Dan, to discuss just the possibilities of utilizing Ridgemark's back gate for the residents, as well as local resident Lynn Hilton, I believe, dealing with the Tyler Trail piece. So like to go ahead and invite, I guess, Ridgemark up first, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's quite all right.
All right.
We'll go ahead and do that. And I know the presentation is a little bit longer than, the 3 minutes that we typically allow for a public comment, and we'll allow for that. And then after that, I'll open it up for a public comment and hopefully keep everybody at 3 minutes after that. So we'll go with that presentation first.
Okay. Dan or Paris here?
Good morning, Dan Balcazar. I'm the president of Ridgemark HOA, and I'm here to answer any questions for your preliminary request.
Oh.
Yeah, so again, just so, we haven't talked, but the board was concerned about access and the possible utilization of Ridgemark if there is a complete blockage of the road. So we had the board ask us at our last board meeting to invite you to discuss that, open up preliminary conversation, obviously not come to a resolution today, but I think just open the dialogue of the request, so.
Okay, so the short answer, and thank Dulce for inviting me. She called me. I appreciate that. With that, I discussed this with some of the board members, and then, of course, we had some neighbors that had some questions. So I have a short answer and a long answer as of today. The short answer is no. The long answer is there are liability concerns, insurance concerns, safety concerns. Who's going to pay for it? I've heard several of the supervisors talking about money, 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 and so get ready if that's the direction you want to go. But we are certainly open to hear what your ideas are and how that may come to fruition. But initially, we had everything from anger to laughing to, well, find out what they propose. So that's why I'm here.
Okay, well, that's pretty straightforward, and I appreciate that, and, and I could understand that, to be honest with you. A lot of that, the inconvenience of having Southside Road close is, residents that live in Ridgemark that have to take their kids to school have a little bit longer route, and possibly, there's an urgency on our part to get that road open, of course. And, during rainy season, there could be a problem as far as access to the other side of the road. But myself, I don't know if there's anything we really need to do at this point in time other than try to, get Southside Road dealt with. Supervisor Munzer, yeah.
For all that we've done for Ridgemark since you've had your issues, I'm a little disappointed in your short answer. So
I apologize.
But I understand the concerns because this is a complicated thing. But if we were to lose the access to Southside Road at Trespenas Creek Crossing, and that hill was unstable because of the winter rains, we have to come up with a solution for those residents. I would have preferred to hear from you today that you would have been open to dialogue, and for you to come up and say the short answer is no, it's very disconcerting because we have gone to bat for the Ridgemark residents time and time again when you had your issues up there with trees being cut and roads being threatened with use beyond your control. So that's all I have to say, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
If I could respond, like I said, I gave you the short answer, and also we are open. If you come up with some solutions, we're all ears. We're more than willing to listen. As I explained, I'll say it again, there are a lot of liability issues, safety issues, cost issues, et cetera, and those would need to be discussed. And what I had said earlier was, right now with the slide, you are already discussing enormous costs. So that is something that you'd have to think about. And we acknowledge, and there are people here in the audience, friends of mine that live out there that are going to be inconvenienced. I understand that. But two things. I am here to represent the Ridgemark community, and so far, that is their short answer. And if you can come up with some good ideas, then again, we're all ears.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the board? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to public comment.
Actually,
Oh, Seo Espinoza? Oh,
yeah, Lynn? Is that me?
oh, of course, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I'm the owner of the property that's on Southside Road.
I'll allow you the time that you need, whatever you need.
I'd appreciate it.
You could,
Oh, yeah, please, this, our neighbor.
Here you go.
oh, can you stand in the mic, please, so we could get it, everyone could hear a little bit better and we record it as well.
Okay, I apologize, this is a video from a neighbor of ours. He took it Sunday last, I think. So 9 days ago. I'd like to show it because I think it'll really tell a few things. One thing, who is representing Sunny Slope today?
Mr. Hilden, can you just address the board in your comments? That makes it easier for us.
Okay, well, I bought this property in 1999. When I bought it, I was told that Pond 5, I'm going to go ahead and turn this on because it takes a few minutes. I was told that Pond 5 had been closed down because of slide. 1984, come to find out, 1984, and I suppose that it was Sunny Slope Water that paid for it, who went in and cleaned up the slide. 1984, they shut down Pond 5. I've lived there since 2001. There was never any water that I have ever seen in Pond 5 prior to that expansion. So I would like to know how we can come up and say, oh, it's been used the whole time. It hasn't been. I lived there. I would have seen water in it. I would like to see some sort of a proof that that's the case. When you see this, you know, every person who has gone up on this hill has said, well, it's obvious what the problem is. You got a pond there percolating down the hill. It's a pond on top of a earthquake fault zone. Okay, never should have been built there in the first place. I could never understand why Sunny Slope wanted to go ahead and develop this thing, knowing that they had problems. The effluent was one of the things that was promised when they did this thing. It was a $118 million project that they cut back in half. Interestingly, Hollister was able to do that for half the price, and they do have recycled water at Hollister. Somehow Sunny Slope couldn't get there. Okay, here we're getting to the slide. Okay. You can see I don't have a stability problem where I am. And you can see that facility right there, I raise fish. I go through some water. The reason my property is nice and green is because that's where my effluent goes. I raise fish, I put the effluent out on my property. The effluent from Pond 5 is what caused this slide. And we can deny it, we can do whatever, but the facts are the facts. Until you get the water out of those ponds, that slide is just going to continue. It's already been developed. Pond 5 started it by using it again. And now I suspect the ponds behind it, you're probably going to lose as well. Take a look at this. You can't quite see here where this is headed right yet. But you see right up here, right up there in the top, that's Pond 5. Look where the slide's going. You stand up on top of that, it scares the hell out of you. I used to have access. You can see this other property. I had a shooting range down there approved by the sheriff. I had an area where I raised grass to feed to my animals. I can't get to it anymore. It's pretty clear. I don't know how anybody can say, oh, what happened? I've been the neighbor. I've owned the property for 19 years. I'm the neighbor. I know what's been in that pond, and it hasn't been there with water until the last couple of years. That's the problem. Okay, I guess, do you have any questions for me?
No, we don't.
I'm sure,
The
yeah.
pictures are very clear. Supervisor Munz, please.
This is my wife.
Oh, yes. We only do one person at a time at the podium, and Supervisor Munzer.
I
has a
was
question.
invited here, sir. I was invited
yes,
here.
Yes, you
I
are.
didn't-
I'm sorry. Please, Supervisor Munzer might have a question.
My comment is, Len and Susan, thank you for working with us, being available, and trying to work through this situation. I know it's very frustrating.
Jerry, I'd like to thank you too. Mr. Munzer was the first person to come out. I sent an email to Sunny Slope, Don Ridenour, who hasn't bothered to show up to any of this. Don Ridenour, when I first saw this happening back in May, the ground had dropped about that far. I sent him an email, said, hey, we need to get a geologist up here. He took a week. We finally got together. We went down, and the hill had dropped that far in a week. Okay? Anyone that's gone up there, and there have been plenty up there, every one of them has said, well, there's your problem. There's your problem. But somehow, if you work at Sunny Slope Water, I guess we can't see that that might be the problem. We have to be in denial. But it is the problem. I think it's really clear when you look at that. Look at those. Look at that right there. You see where that pond is? You see where they're headed? That's wet. There's been mud. You guys have been called to come out and check the mud, but you haven't shown up. Don Chapin has called you guys numerous times because they were told, get geologists out there to check the mud when you find wet, but they haven't shown up. I don't know, do you guys work for Sunny Slope too? I mean, it makes me wonder.
We were there. We've been there.
Okay, well then you would know already.
Mr. Chair?
Okay.
What do you really think the problem
Anyway,
is?
we want to, thank you.
Mr.
Thank
Chair,
you.
if
Yes.
Susan can come up and ask her question through us to Sunny Slope.
Of course.
I have to make a couple of comments to the young engineer from Sunny Slope. I know you haven't been around,
Susan?
I'm sorry,
Try
and
and address it
Address
to us. That's,
Um,
thank you.
to the young engineer from Sunny Slope, I don't think he's been around. I have been on the property since 1999. It is absolutely not factual for him to say that that has been used. That is not correct, and I'm here to tell you, I live there. I've been up there a lot of times. It was dry. It was dry for years. There's a lot of people that watched the property be fixed from the landslide in the 80s. Larry Lamonto, who people in this room probably know, fixed the slide along with Jason DeRosa. Somebody paid for that. Somebody has the record on why that was done. It was done there. As this is happening, I realize Sunny Slope Waters, got their radar up. Sunny Slope Water hasn't been the best neighbor to us. So if anybody feels that Lynn is a little upset about it, Sunny Slope Water tried to condemn my property in order to do this and put us through a lot of unnecessary stuff. And did it during health issues going on in our house, did a lot of different things. So, we've never not been a friend of Sunny Slope. In fact, I think as all the members of the Sunny Slope group that work there, we've always had a good relationship. When they condemned the property, I have a folder this high from Sunny Slope Water between us when they went to condemn the property. First of all, condemning a person's property without even coming to the table with that person is just unknown. To me, it's unfathomable. But they did that. The second thing is I have all the documentation from Sunny Slope showing that the big reason for redoing all this was so that they could recycle water, get the effluents onto, God, a 36-hole golf course? That might be nice. Got some guys growing walnuts in the valley. Got a guy like my husband who grows grain for our goats, and 63 acres. We have a little bit of this and that. But that never happened. The documents in my condemnation show that that was supposed to be what they were going to do. So my question to Sunny Slope today is, how much did you spend on the wastewater revamping facility? How much did you go in to spend? I would like to know if they have those numbers. The second question I have, which I think a lot of people would like to know, is whose waste is processed on top of that hill? Where is it? Is it Oak Creek, Quail, and Ridgemark only? And I'd like to know whose waste comes to Sunny Slope's facility up there. That's something that none of us have ever known. I also want to make sure, and I just got the thing from Earth Systems, that DNA is going to be analyzed. Will that include the bacteria that's put inside those ponds? Will they be specifically looking for the bacteria that's added to those ponds in order to make the thicker waste into effluents? So those are the questions I have. And it is very passionate. It's very passionate for somebody who cannot walk on his property anymore. It's very passionate when every time you walk on your property, it's being taken away. And it's very clear in the video that in a good rainstorm, Sunny Slope's no longer going to have a pond there. The pond that was empty for many, many years, empty, dry, nothing in it. So my only comment is, let's be honest with how the effluents have been processed up on that hill, and let's find Larry Lamonto. Get Larry in here. Maybe he can.
Thank you. Now, we'll wait on the answers on some, because there may be more questions after the public comment, and we'll go into public comment, and it'll be 3 minutes for everybody else. Janet, do we have any speaker cards? Okay. Yep, hand your speaker card to the clerk and introduce yourself and make your comment.
My name is Stephen Mills. I'm the Vice President of the Ridgemark Bluffs Homeowners Association. I just have a quick message, and that is that if you're going to negotiate for access through Ridgemark for the residents of Southside, there are more than one homeowners association within the gates of Ridgemark. We don't always play very well together, but one of the things we do play well on is security, and that we all contribute to the gated security in the compound. And all I'm asking is, if you're going to negotiate with one homeowners association, that you include all the homeowners associations within the gates in those negotiations, because we all have an interest in security, we all contribute to security, and we all want to be a part of, and we own our own roads. Ridgemark Homeowners Association is the largest, they own the most roads, we own our own roads, and if you negotiate an agreement with Ridgemark Homes, HOA, what you're basically doing is making our roads public, and that could result in inverse condemnation. So just include us in the negotiations, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Well, Mr. Chair, while Marty's walking up, Mr. Mills, can you be sure and leave your contact information with a staff member before you leave today? Sure. Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Marty Richmond from Hollister. I have no horse in this race. I don't live up there. I don't use Southside Road. But I come to a lot of these meetings, and I think I bring my brain all the time. I try to. My wife doesn't like when I leave it home alone. So I'll try and add something. And I've been through, I wear my cap because I'm proud of my military service. I've been through the wars. I've been through a lot of emergencies, and I've seen how things are handled during emergencies. I think this is an emergency. That's my opinion. And I would like to suggest how you should handle some things here. Without offending the gentleman who said, let's not jump to conclusions, I think what you ought to do is start down 5 or 6 parallel paths at the same time, because some of them require very little investment on your part, but will save you a lot of time. For instance, you should start looking for an alternate road right away. You don't have to invest a lot of money in it. All you got to do is walk the site and say, here's a possibility. Let's look at, and what would that take, and what would that cost, and how long would that take? And you could do it just on the back of a napkin, just to have some idea. And you ought to be looking for several possibilities. As far as your experts go, I would do the same thing. I would ask them to sit down at a table and say, look, I understand you don't know where you're going. You're going to drill core, and then you're going to look at the core and decide what you got to look at. But there's only a universe of what it could be, and that universe is only so wide. And if you drew a bell curve, they would tell you that 80% of the time it's this, and 10% of the time it's that, and whatever. And then you could say, well, if it's this, what would it take to solve it? How much money and how much time, approximately? You don't need the exact number, it doesn't matter. But you got to get some kind of idea of what the universe you're working in is. If the answer to one of them is, if it turns out to be water, the answer is we got to inject 7,000 pounds of epoxy into the hill. The answer is going to be we can't do that. And if the answer is it's $20 million, the answer is probably going to be we can't do that, so let's start looking for another one. You can do all that up front while we're waiting for the drilling machine to show up. And you can get a head start mentally on where you are. As far as people jumping to conclusions and getting off track, well, I'm sorry, we've just got to act like adults and realize there may be 500 different ways to do it. And we're not going to pick one until we get the support to know which one works. However, it never hurts to look ahead and say, what are we really looking at here? Are we looking at 5 months and $10, or are we looking at 5 years and $1 billion? Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. My name is Ninette Carotto. I live off of Blossom Lane. So whatever happens, I would be totally isolated if the creek came up. In fact, we couldn't even leave our house because if that hill comes down again and lands by that mailbox and the entrance that they just recreated, which I have to thank Chapin for, they did a beautiful job. If we don't have that, the only way we have is through fields. And if it rains, we don't go that way either. We watched when Sonny Paulus had Lamonto, because it's our view, working on the hill. I have to agree with the pictures I've seen from Mr. Hilden. Sunny Slope water, in my opinion, went into a pond. We thought there was only one percolation pond. And of course, we're just down in the hill and we just hear chit-chat. We never had any idea that all those ponds were up. And I think visually, there is no other way than it can be except by that water being set into the hill. I worked for Public Works for 24 and 3/4 years. I can remember seeing areas that had slip outs, which was in layman's terms, clay, gravel, and I call it a silica, like a glass type thing. And that whole bluff is filled with that kind of thing. In fact, maybe 5 years ago, there was a huge landslide on South Side, and it was across, it would be east of what they're working on now. And that the remnants are still there, so it's very visual. That happened one night in the rain, and we were fortunate. There were no houses on our property at that time, but tons of gravel came off that hill, which is the corner of the Lampa property that's being developed, came roaring down across the road, clear into our property. My son heard it, called us and said, there's something going on, but I'm not stepping out. I don't know what's going on, because he could hear it clear at the house. And that house that he was living is set back a ways from it. But if they can't fix this, we will be landlocked. And in my opinion, Sunny Slope is the culprit. I'm wondering whatever happened to the records from Sonny Paulus when they first had that slide problem. There has to be a history written somewhere regarding that. And I think it's important that this be looked at realistically, because right now, we're going to be victims, and Mr. Hilden is already.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not, I'm going to close the public comment period. And then, in fairness, the Sunny Slope Water District asked Sunny Slope Water District if they would like to answer a few of the questions that were posed to them. So public comment period is closed. Rob, would you like to answer any of those questions?
Yes, sure. So I first want to start off, I certainly understand the concern that was expressed here. This is a serious issue, and Sunny Slope is not trying to treat this as if it's not. However, I want to reiterate that I'm not a geologist, and so I don't know what has caused this slide, and I don't believe that any of us do, and jumping to conclusions is very dangerous. Regarding the use of that Pond 5, all of Sunny Slope's records and all of our reporting to the State Water Quality Control Board have indicated that that pond has consistently been used ever since 1984. Again, our operation for those ponds is through a rotation. So at any given point, certain ponds might be dry. However, it has all of our records and reporting have indicated that it has consistently been used. As far as the question regarding the area that Sunny Slope serves for sewer service, when I was presenting my presentation and had the map of the Ridgemark area, that outlined area, which included Ridgemark, Quail Hollow, and Oak Creek, that is Sunny Slope service area. So anybody's wastewater within that does go to that treatment plant there and is treated at that site. Let's see.
Okay, you guys could have conversations outside the chambers. If I just want to keep the order of the room, please.
I want to mention that the reason that I'm here representing the district as their associate engineer rather than Donald Reidenhauer, who is the general manager, Don is actually on vacation right now, and as the urgency of this, Sunny Slope did not want to have to delay this meeting and these presentations in order for him to get here, and so we saw the urgency of it as being necessary to have it even in Don's temporary absence as he's on vacation. And then as far as the comment about there being mud on the site, as far as I have seen, and I've been there quite often, I have not seen any. We have seen some moisture that, in my knowledge, would seem common when you're digging down into the ground. But until we get soil samples and really have a chance to analyze that, it's not helpful to start throwing out words like that without information to back it up. And then, again, I want to indicate that Sunny Slope, we want to cooperate, we want to see a solution here, and we need to make sure that the solution is an actual solution and based off of actual data. Regarding previous slides, I have not seen any records indicating that in Sunny Slope's records, and to my knowledge, it was not Sunny Slope that has paid for any slide repairs. I believe I've covered most of the questions.
I think you covered it all. And, I think from the county's perspective, and correct me if I'm wrong, we hope to have a collaborative effort in analyzing what's going on out there and working towards that solution. And, I'm certain that the special district, the Sunny Slope Water District, if found, responsible, will step up and, accept the responsibility and work with the county and resolve it if that's the case. But we're in the research mode right now. We're looking for options as far as how to deal with this slide and also transportation through that area. We'll have to analyze what's available and what's not available. I'm somewhat discouraged to hear, the Ridgemark Homeowners Association say short answer no. That sends a clear signal to me, and a very selfish signal. And it's concerning in the fact that if you have an emergency situation of the river flooding or running, and you have neighbors that are just right outside your boundary line that can't get in or out of their homes, that you'd shut the door on them. That's, in my mind, not what a community is about. But we all have to work together to solve this problem. That's my comments. Anyone else have anything to say? Supervisor Cruz?
Oh, God. Oh, Mr. Chair, I actually concur with you 100%. I thought that the concept of today's meeting was to work together and reach some type of cooperation, or at least develop a beginning stages of a plan in which we all can work together. Unfortunately, when I heard the words from Ridgemark, I too was taken aback. I was amazed, knowing that how much work, how much we have actually put on behalf of Ridgemark, especially Supervisor Munzer's, it behooves me. Just, I can't say enough words, or even the words I like to say, I can't say them today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'm sorry, we're done for today, but we have.
We're closed. That's it, Mr. Chair. Public session is closed.
Yeah. Do we need any direction for RMA today?
Well, so what I'm hearing is we will go ahead and we plan to facilitate through RMA the issue, figure out what the issue is. That's the plan which we're working on, as well as look at some other options if we do not get that road open, at other options to do something with the access to that road. So that's what I'm hearing from the board. We'll work with RMA on that. John can add some further comments if he likes. I didn't hear you. No. Okay. No.
Yeah, so we are working on various avenues. As Mr. Richmond wisely pointed out, there is an opportunity to look at a lot of different options on how we can provide access if the road stays closed. What are different options for dealing with the slide and getting it open? So we're working with Sunny Slope. We plan to work with the homeowners associations and with Mr. Hilden if that's necessary, but we're looking for every option to provide access. That includes what we can do with the low water crossing on South Side to keep that open longer than we normally keep that open. What kind of engineering can we do out there, for the rainy season, if that's necessary? What are opportunities for potentially getting the road open around the slide, if that's maybe, getting some right-of-way so we can do a temporary bypass road, or if we do a one-lane controlled bypass around it. We don't know. It's premature to talk about those options at this board meeting, which is why we didn't bring them, but we are working on those.
Okay, great. And I'm sure when in time is necessary, we'll weigh the options and pick one.
Yeah, hopefully soon.
Okay, very good.
As soon as possible.
All right. I want to thank everyone for attending. Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you. Yep. And we'll try to get you any information that we have about geotech or anything like that.
Thank you.